Welcome to School Your Soul, where we interview some of the wisest people on the planet, exploring ideas that nourish your mind, body, and spirit. It's education for your soul, and I'm your host, Sarah Cordial. Hey guys, welcome to a new episode of School Your Soul. We have a very special guest today. This woman just warmed my heart. You're gonna love her. Suzi Lula is a much sought after spiritual counselor, teacher, and inspirational speaker who is an expert in the field of human transformation. Combining her innovative teachings over her 18 years in private practice, along with her master's degree in spiritual psychology, Suzi has mentored some of the most successful ministers, coaches, and evolutionary leaders influencing our culture today, and has been described as a teacher's teacher by the nationally renowned spiritual leader Michael Bernard Beckwith, who, I might add, is one of Oprah's top 100 spiritual teachers of our time. You guys know I'll always get an Oprah reference in here if possible. Suzi serves on the faculty of the university at the Agape International Center of Truth in Los Angeles, one of the fastest growing spiritual centers in the country with over a 10,000 person membership. You guys, I love Agape. It's such a magical place. There's an amazing sense of community and kinship. It's like a spiritual safe haven. The founder, Michael Bernard Beckwith, who I mentioned before, is one of the most powerful speakers and leaders I have ever encountered. There's such great diversity amongst the members, and as an added bonus, they have these unbelievable music guests. Van Morrison just showed up one night I was there to perform. No big deal. So anyway, back to Suzi. Known as a visionary leader, Suzi is also redefining motherhood. She challenges conventional thinking that says mothers must sacrifice and martyr themselves to be good mothers, and instead guides them to the realization that when they thrive, their children will flourish as well. And she has an amazing book on this called The Motherhood Evolution. Suzi is also a composer and an award-winning pianist, just to add to her many accolades. On today's show, we talk about, amongst other things, self-care. What is self-care? What it means to take care of ourselves, how we can take better care of ourselves spiritually, emotionally, and physically, and how that has such a huge impact on those around us. We also discuss how Suzi discovered her purpose, how we can learn to love the parts of ourselves that we deem the least attractive, the importance of finding a balance between doing and being, and so much more. Suzi is such a special human. I felt instantly connected to her, and I know you will too. Enjoy. Hey guys, welcome to the show. We're here with Suzi Lula today. I'm so excited to have you here, Suzi. I'm actually at Suzi's house, which is amazing. So many of my interviews are done over Skype, but it is a rare treat to just get to sit in person with someone and get to feel your energy and just share the space with you. So thank you for having me over.
Thank you so much for coming over. It's like a tea party with girlfriends. Who gets to do this anymore?
I know. I'm loving it. We both almost just came to tears appreciating each other's energy so much just initially, which is such a special thing. And so thank you, Barnett Bain, for connecting us. They've been amazing and like introducing me to different people. So
yeah, Barnett is one of my favorite people on planet Earth. I have this saying, my favorite people that I don't get to see very often,
yes, totally.
But thank you, Barnett. I wanted to call you right now and say thank you for introducing me to Sarah.
Yes. So let's kind of start. I mean, I consider myself a seeker. I'm always kind of looking for answers and trying to like figure out why I'm here and what is this greater thing? What is the purpose of life? Have you always been a seeker?
Oh my gosh, I can't even believe you're using this word seeker. Or I should say, of course, you would start by using this word seeker. I believe that is the core of me. I'm a seeker. I always say that I'm a student of myself and a student of life. And when I first I'm a spiritual therapist, counselor, I see clients all day. And when I first became licensed, that was the phrase that came to me of who I wanted to work with. The phrase is, I wanted to work with committed truth seekers.
Whoa, chills.
Chills.
Like, that was my first question.
Yes, and that was almost 20 years ago. And to this day, that phrase has never shifted. I want to work with anyone who's a committed truth seeker, who is seeking. So yes, I share this with you, and it's no surprise now we feel this resonance. Yeah. But I am absolutely a seeker, and I I eat it up. I'm a student of life. I love it. I'm a student of our interior awareness and our external awareness. I just,
Yes. Something that I really have appreciated by watching videos of you is that you're an amazing teacher. Like, is that just always been a part of you to be able to teach? Is that just a natural part of who you are?
I think yes, it is. But I also believe, to your point of being a seeker, I think when an individual has a really pure intention to learn and to grow, that it's translatable because you can feel it. You can feel it when someone, I feel like sometimes I tease that I'm such a good teacher because I've had so much to learn, right? I've really had a lot of lessons to learn and I've learned them well. I'm a good student. So when we've really learned something, I think it is easier then because I'm not an intellectual teacher. I don't teach by I'm not usually spouting rhetoric or research, although that is important, but I'm not usually teaching from that place. I'm usually seriously teaching from my own heart, from my own experience. And I think that people feel that, right?
Yes.
But I also, when I was younger, I took piano. I was pretty competitive in piano. And that was my first job in making money. When I was probably about 16, I started teaching piano. And weirdly enough, I was a really good piano teacher. Weirdly enough. And I think, again, because I played piano, it's like an actor teaching other actors. They're in the craft of acting and the art of acting. So I've taught pretty much all my life.
I love it because I want to actually tie back to that the piano piece because first off, I saw in one of your Agape services that you did, you talk about that we all have a unique destiny, right?
Yes.
And it really struck me, the story about kind of you discovering what your purpose was or what it wasn't. And you said originally you started learning piano and kind of didn't have that. You can tell the story better than I can, but I'm curious to know really how you discovered your purpose and figured out what it was that you were here to do.
What a great question, because I feel, again, kind of tears. I think that every one of us deep down on planet Earth is searching, seeking, longing, yearning to connect with why in the world am I here and how can I live that out to its fullest while I'm here. So for me, my mom was the one that put me in piano and I was very competitive in these contests, but really I loved playing the piano, but I wasn't necessarily competitive by nature. But I was competitive in the sense of I was desperately seeking my own mom's love. So I felt emotionally disconnected from her, and I'm a pretty touchy-feely person, and I was longing for that connection, that emotional nurturing and nourishment. And being young, as many of us are, I misunderstood, and I put two opposing things together. I thought mistakenly that the way to get her love would be to win all these piano contests, right? So I lived a big part of my life doing super well because I wanted her love. So I was playing the piano, not getting her love, and also empty inside. So it was a lose-lose tangle for me. And it wasn't until I recognized that I was trying to live out her destiny for me, and I needed to unravel that. At one time, I didn't even know what the heck my destiny was because I had become so invested in trying to live out her picture for me. And I think that speaks to many of us, some to more overt ways and some in the subtle ways that my husband and I were just talking about this yesterday, checking in on the state of our marriage because we've been together for 20 years. Okay, that's so scary.
Amazing.
But in those 20 years to look and see if and how subtly we might be putting our truest, realist, authentic self to the side to try to be in this marriage, make the other person happy. So I think it happens often. And I believe it's a very courageous act to say, wow, I am invested, I'm committed, I'm dedicated to seeking out my unique destiny and then to live it out. And each one of us does we were born encoded, I want to say, like we chose, we came here, for a reason.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Gosh, there's so many different things you said in there that I kind of that I've wanted to talk about already. So I think I'm gonna talk a little bit more about kind of your specific journey. You have a master's in spiritual psychology, which when I read spiritual psychology, I was like, ooh, that sounds so interesting. I want to study this. So what is spiritual psychology?
Okay, first of all, you and I are like one person.
I know.
We're like sisters.
I read your thing and I was like,
for sure.
I want to do that. I want to do
This
that.
is how I ended up getting my master's in spiritual psychology. Exactly what you just said. I saw the two words together and I was like, this is so me. Someone has put these two words together. They're my passion. I'm a student of spirituality and wisdom teachings, and I'm a student of psychology and our internal awareness. So you put those two words together and I was in heaven. I was sign me up, right? And that is what I have come to know, is that our humanness and our human journey is within the context of our spiritual journey. So we've come here for a reason and a purpose. And in my work with individuals, I find this to the person. Yes, we are unraveling and untangling different things on our human dimension and our human journey and our human lessons, but they fit in. It's like a jigsaw puzzle. You have to find all the edges. There's a picture frame that goes around it, and that's our spiritual journey. And you've all probably heard that saying, we are human beings having a spiritual experience.
Yes.
But I have found with my clients and working with individuals that really we are spiritual beings yearning to have a spiritual experience while on earth, right? We want to have that experience of unconditional love and self-acceptance and real joy and real fulfillment and prosperity and creativity and inspiration. Those are all spiritual qualities.
Yes.
So I feel like we want this human journey to be infused like us sitting here across from each other. This is the quality of life that we're all seeking, are these really real connections.
Yes.
And that's a spiritual experience.
Yes. Oh, I love that. So how would you say, first, how would you define religion versus spirituality? What is the difference between those two?
Great question. Spirituality is what we are. We're born. When you look at an infant, when you look at a toddler, when you look at a toddler in a park swinging with abandon, an infant, a child, they just live with utter awe, abandon, connection. You can just look at them and see they are from a place and a space that is transcendent of this. They're here and they're so full of this energy. They cannot be contained until we try to contain them, So that's spirituality. It's the energy and the essence of what we are. You can call it anything. You don't even need to call it spirituality. It's just our innate nature.
Would you say soul is the same?
Soul, spirit. We're unlimited.
God.
Universe. Yes, spirit, just that feeling of joy, uninhibited, unparalleled, the feeling of awe when you see a sunset or the ocean and it just transports you. You read poetry, you see art, you listen to music. A piece of music transports you. To me, that is spiritual. That is our essence. That is who we are. And religion is a set of doctrines that is trying to contain that, to package it.
Yes.
Right? And sometimes I personally had a really excellent experience with religion, but it was only because I was raised Jewish. It was only because my rabbi was very mystical. So he would literally tell us, don't allow any of the doctrines of Judaism to contain you.
Sure.
Because this is just a vessel.
Sure.
So the best of religion is that it offers a path to get to the spiritual, to get to the transcendent place.
Yes.
But some of what happens with any kind of organization, whether it's a corporate organization. There's amazing corporate organizations, and then there's others not so much.
Sure.
So some of religion is more focused on the doctrines,
Yes,
rather than the spirit.
Okay, that's perfect. That's helpful. Can you help us? So I've been to Agape a few times, never while you've been speaking, but I think it's such a special place.
Yes.
Will you tell everybody what Agape is
Yes.
and kind of just help us gather like what the essence of this place is?
Yes. So Agape International Spiritual Center, and if anyone wants to go online and research, which I highly recommend you do, you go to agapelive.com. I'm sure Sarah will put the link.
Show notes.
So Agape is a spiritual community. It is based on the teachings of Martin Luther King, who had a vision of a beloved community, meaning a community of people of all different ethnicities, all different races, all different social classes, that we would all come together as one community. And it was founded by my teacher and visionary master spiritual teacher, bar none, Michael Bernard Beckwith.
Oh my gosh, he's insane.
He's insane.
Like he's just channeling something.
Yeah, he's the real deal.
Totally.
And so back to your original question about seeker. This man is a seeker in the truest sense of the word, and this man is a lover in the truest sense of the word. He lives in that state of awe, right? He walks his talk. And so the community that he founded, it was a vision that he had. It started in his living room, similar to this office, with a group of his friends and individuals who shared his vision. And it has grown into this, tens of thousands of global individuals around planet Earth, because you can live stream in, that share this vision of a world that works for everyone, basically.
It's so special to be there. And I something I love about an Agape service is that there's this interaction with the people next to you. You'll say things or repeat things and talk to them. And it's such a simple act, but like it just reminds me of that importance of being connected and how isolated we can be in our everyday life. And just this feeling of connection is so strong.
That is one of the tenets that Reverend Michael has founded the community on. So I've never been to a service, and I've been going to the services there for 20-something years, and he's been my spiritual teacher for all of those years. And I've never been there once where he doesn't. The interaction is a core tenet and principle, as is the music there. I could go on and on and on. I met my husband there.
Oh, that's amazing.
So I have a lot of good things to say. But seriously, what you're speaking about, the interaction, the real soulful connection, again, it's what I really think we're all longing for. I don't know about you, but in the clients I work with and my friendships, life can be rather isolating at this time. And I think we're all seeking connection.
Totally. So I've watched a few. So you've done the Wednesday service a handful of times. How many times have you done it?
Probably a handful of times.
Yeah. And I watched the videos on YouTube, and you were amazing. And I have to just say, like, outside of this podcast, I really just am curious how you became such an amazing inspirational speaker. Like, how did you learn this skill of storytelling and the tone of your voice and the changing of your pacing? Like, everything about it was like, I was awestruck. I was like, I need to learn how she learned to do this. And it might tie back to what you were saying earlier, in that, like, when you live something and know it so well, it can kind of just come from your heart and it comes out. And it seemed like it was probably part of that. But is there any like part of the technical aspects of just speaking in front of a crowd? I mean, you commanded that audience. Like, it was unbelievable.
Thank you so much. You're kind of blowing my mind right now, because I've never really thought about it. Wow.
Is it practice? Is it you've always had that?
Well, certainly the more one does something. So I think, like with Michael Beckwith, I mean, he speaks 3 times on a Sunday and every Wednesday night for, 30 years. So he's practiced.
Yeah.
I'm much less practiced. That's why one thing, you're blowing my mind, because I don't consider, I don't speak out there, I mean, I do often, but not like that. But I do honestly believe it is what you were saying, to go back to our conversation about being a student, So what I'm sharing is real. I don't share anything that I haven't lived through, worked through, processed through. I don't speak about anything that I don't know intimately from the inside out.
Yeah.
And I just think that that comes across. I've never really thought about, thank you so much. It's actually so touching to think that I commanded an audience.
Yes.
But
You should
really where my practice is and my intentional or my intention setting is around, okay, universe, give me the courage to get out of the way, to allow whatever message is meant to come through. It does probably connect also back to being raised to play piano, right? So in a competition, in a recital, so we do a lot of practicing in our own home as musicians, practice, practice, practice. But when it's time to go perform or play in front of individuals, the most important thing to me was having that practice as a foundation. So I would walk on stage knowing I had that strong foundation, but simultaneously having the courage to let it all go and just trust and like free fall and see what's going to come through me. And I think that's what's exciting between a speaker and an audience. So the same philosophy is what I do with speaking, which is I, to the very best of my ability, seek to walk my talk in my life. And that's my foundation is, living a life that is intentional and willing to learn my lessons, and then to walk up. And I do the same ritual before I speak every single time. As my little bum is leaving the chair, I just say, okay, universe, now I'm leaving everything on the chair and I'm going up completely naked, so to speak. I'm yours, kind of.
Wow, like surrendering.
Yeah, I'm in a free fall. And
wow,
that's my intention. So how it comes across is,
that's beautiful.
Thank you.
Well, it really touched me. So
thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And I think that your point is so well made, because really when you think about it, there really isn't any difference whether I'm going up to speak on a stage or someone else is going in to turn in a project to their boss, or a woman is going in to have a conversation with her husband, or a parent going in to speak to their child, or really the philosophy and the practice is the same. It's take care of my own learnings, take responsibility for my own world, and then be open to what might come next.
Yeah.
So it's a similar.
Yes, totally. So I want to talk a little bit about authenticity, just kind of the idea that, we can show up on any given day. And, I know I have a million different versions of myself.
Yes.
I have this higher self that I know is, me coming from this place of love. And then I have these older conditioned patterns that usually are from old stuff. So you can either use an example of your clients or yourself, but how do we work on discerning between our authentic higher self, that is the self that we want to be following the most frequently, as often as possible, and the old conditioned patterns? How do we find the difference between those two, and so that we can choose the higher
Such a great question. Isn't this the question? How do we show up as our most authentic selves?
Yes.
And how do we even discern? So
Yes.
Great question. I see it as a continuum. And as you know, I'm a huge advocate for self-care. So this is going to probably marry these two ideas.
Great.
So we aren't really taught how to care for ourselves. We're not really taught how to care for our emotions, how to care for our hurts, how to care for our wounds. So we create, depending on what's happened to us in childhood, often we can create what I call a survival self. It's myself, like I was speaking about my relationship with my mom, or lack thereof. And because of my longing of wanting this emotional connection, I created a survival self, a part that protected me, right? So a lot of our work, it is said that on the spiritual path, we are here to acquire nothing, but only to shed that which we have acquired that no longer serves us.
Yes.
So authenticity can be like, you could use the analogy of a onion, and the survival self are the outer layers of the onion, and there resting at the center of the onion is our authentic self. Or you could use the analogy of like the nesting dolls, where the largest nesting doll is your survival self, and then you take off and there's another and another until finally you get to your authentic self. Or you could look at it like a spiral, where your authentic and highest self is the one that's grand and boundless and limitless. And deep down there is your survival self that's hiding.
Mm-hmm.
No matter what analogy you use or what way resonates with you, what's consistent is there are parts of us that are hurting and parts of us that overcompensate or undercompensate, right? And I don't necessarily make a distinction between, I try not to live so much in duality, black and white. Oh, this is my authentic self. This isn't my authentic self. But rather see it as this continuum that if I find myself, let's say, overcompensating, I was trained to be really nice, and I can be really nice to the detriment of my own needs,
Yes,
caring
me
for my
too.
own
I have
needs.
that
Yes,
for sure.
women, I think we're just mired in this, right?
Yes.
And often we don't even know that we are. We're just going through life being nice, not even knowing we have needs,
Yes.
right? So I wouldn't say that the part of me that's overly nice, I wouldn't say it's not my authentic self. It really isn't. But on the continuum, it's simply a part that needs love.
Mm-hmm.
So I have this saying, the parts of me that I deem the least attractive are the parts of me that need my love the most.
Mm.
So if that part of me that's overly nice, saccharine, overly nice, that feels inauthentic or needy, and I just don't want you to see my neediness, well, that's the part that needs my love the most. They're like little orphans. That's the one. That's the 8-year-old that didn't get adopted.
How do we do that? How do we give that?
Right. So first, willingness to just adopt them. Willingness to go, wow, it's a needy part of me. Somebody's got to love it.
Yeah.
Might as well start with me. And then really, I have a course that is entitled, an online, it's a self-study course called Learning the Language of Self-Compassion. I think it's the least understood language. We don't know how, exactly what you said, we don't know how do we do that. So it starts with this phrase, it's so understandable that you would think you need to be overly nice.
Mm-hmm.
It's so understandable that you would think you need to abandon yourself in order to fit into the group.
Mm-hmm.
It's so understandable that you would turn away from your real heartfelt desire because this man wants blah, blah, blah.
Mm-hmm.
Or, it starts with this, the phrase is, it's so understandable, but it comes with that energy of, I'm here. I want to talk to you. You haven't done anything wrong. Mm-hmm. It's not bad that you're needy. It wouldn't be better if you're not needy. It's that this is a place that is calling out for love.
Is it similar to kind of talking to your inner child? In my IBP studies, it was kind of like we would have to comfort. That's just the little girl in you that's kind of seeking out that whatever it is, the attention. Like for me, the niceness piece probably comes back to realizing that when I was really happy or really nice, that's where I got the love, like you with playing the piano. That's where I got the mirroring back of like, oh, you're doing something good. So then it was an authentic trait that I possess, but I took it into overdrive when I realized what it could give me, so that I'd blanket it over situations and kind of lose touch with my inner voice.
Yes.
Instead of,
yes,
having it authentically be me, and then having the moments where I wasn't happy or I was angry.
Brilliant. Exactly correct. So yes, you could say inner child.
Okay.
Exactly. That's so brilliant the way that you articulated it. And that's why I don't often like to make such a big distinction about authentic or inauthentic.
Yeah.
Because if that place is a hurting inner child,
Yeah.
then you don't want to be then
That's a
saying
great point.
that's an inauthentic part of me. No, it's a part of me that's hurting, that needs to be educated, that needs love, that needs to mature.
That's
I
a
call it like
good
an
point.
immature part of me. It's a part that, in psychology, there is the theory that if we don't complete an age stage, we're still at that age stage and we can be 30 or 40, but if we haven't completed the lesson of the 0 through 7 age stage, we could be 30 biological years old, but still emotionally 7 years old.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So I don't necessarily think that's an inauthentic place,
Sure.
even though the behavior comes out
Yes.
inauthentically.
Oh, that's really good.
Right?
Yes.
But if I'm 30, if I'm 40, I want to go back to that 7-year-old and go, oh, honey, yes, you were taught to be the nice girl. And you got lots of accolades and acknowledgments for being the nice girl and the smart girl and the pretty girl and the conforming girl and the flexible girl and the easygoing girl. And
you're on it.
Right?
Right.
So we want to go back to that little girl part of us and say, you don't have to do that anymore.
Yeah. It's
I'm
such
right
a relief
here. Yes.
to have that conversation.
Yes.
And I've had so many amazing breakthroughs having that conversation.
Yes.
It's such a tender place in us.
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
A
But we're
beautiful thing.
taught to be dualistic and we're taught to be judgmental. So there, even in spiritual or personal growth, there can be a subtle judgment
Yeah.
that my neediness, but if it's a 7-year-old girl part of me that just wanted the love of my mom and she's
Yes.
desperately needy, which I have been desperately needy,
Yes.
then I don't want to add a layer of self-judgment, even if it's subtle.
That's so good. That was a good takeaway for me to maybe change my language about it. Even though the behavior is inauthentic, it really is giving myself the love in those places and maybe changing
the
and
behavior
owning
is
it, adapting.
incongruent.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So your authentic self would be authentic and the behavior is incongruent. And so to create congruency inside sometimes involves that reconnecting and teaching, and that's the nourishing and nurturing, and that's the part we aren't really schooled in, how to emotionally nourish ourselves. That's why self-care, emotional self-care, I wish was taught to every woman on planet Earth, every child, every one of us, emotional self-care,
Let's talk a little bit about, so you wrote a book called The Motherhood Evolution. You challenge conventional thinking that says mothers must sacrifice and martyr themselves to be good mothers, and instead guide them to the realization that when they thrive, their children will flourish as well. I think everybody should check out this book. I'm, first of all, curious to know what inspired you to write this book in the first place.
Certainly my own relationship with my son. I have a 16-year-old son right now, and I think this book speaks to everyone, whether you are a parent or not, because we all have been mothered to differing degrees.
Yes.
So if you read the book as you, the child, in relationship to your own mothering experience, and we all mother to differing degrees. So for women, we're taught to be the one that brings the homemade cupcakes to whatever party we've been, whether we're a parent or not. That's how we get our acknowledgement, through what we do and how much we martyr ourselves and how little sleep we got the night before, how late we stayed up, how hard, how we baked the homemade cookies instead of stopping at Whole Foods, and all of this society culture gives us acknowledgement for what we do, how we martyr ourselves, how we give to everyone else first. We've received generationally a lot of acknowledgement for this. And so I consider self-care a real act of courage, because it isn't easy to be the first one in your biological family or in your family, your chosen family of friends, to be the one to say, oh, I'm sleeping great. And I actually did just pick these up on the way because I went to a yoga class, or, we just aren't really taught to stand in that my being is full, my quality of life is rich and good. Yeah. So I wrote the book because when my son was young, I had a really challenging time giving myself permission to really take care of myself to the depths that I was before I had him. And I found that I was carrying on these generational patterns that I didn't want to pass on to him. And some of those unattractive qualities that I was talking about earlier, I was impatient. I was yelling at him. I was shaming him. I was criticizing him. He was seeing some of the best in me, but he was also seeing some of the worst in me.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's nothing like seeing an innocent child, or at least I'll speak for myself, seeing my own innocent son reaping my projection, my impatience, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what I knew from before I had a child was the better I take care of myself, the happier I was, the richer the quality of life. I always say the tasks of life will not change. If you're in a relationship, if you're a parent, the task of parenting will not change. But the me that I bring to my parenting tasks are dramatically different whether I've taken care of myself or not. Even in my relationship with my husband, there are certain things we talk about: money, our mortgage, our relationship, where we're going to go on vacation, how we're redoing our kitchen. There's the quote tasks of relationship, intimacy, sexuality, finance. Those are not going to change.
Mm-hmm.
But the me that I bring to that conversation is dramatically different, whether I've cared for myself or not. And in my research with my clients, with women, I have found that the number one thing that we are carrying on is putting ourselves last on the list, thinking that it's selfish to take care of ourselves, thinking that it's selfish to even say it out loud to another girlfriend.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I take care of myself. I feel great. I'm shining. I'm to your original question about everyone wanting to live out their destiny, everyone wanting to live out our best life. We didn't come here to live a half life.
Mm-hmm.
We all want to live and thrive and flourish, but we don't give ourselves, especially as women, permission to do so.
Yeah.
So that's where the book came out of, is I want to give any woman, any individual on planet Earth, anyone who's giving themselves, has a hard time giving themselves permission to take care of themselves. I just want every person on planet Earth to know it will reap you benefits beyond your wildest imagination, just to care for the self we have,
Yeah. What does your self-care routine look like? What does that look like for anybody? Like what do you mean by that?
So for me, the definition of self-care also really needs to be redefined, right? Because we all think it's massages and glass of wine at 5, and those are great. But for me, the definition of self-care is so much deeper. It is nourishing ourselves on the different levels of consciousness. So nourishing our physical self, our spiritual self, and our emotional self. So it's nourishing ourselves. So first and foremost, spiritually, do you feel connected or do you feel disconnected? Do you feel like the universe is for you and that you're supported, or do you feel disconnected and depressed, isolated, anxious, stressed? So you're either feeling connected and abundant and prosperous, or you're feeling disconnected and scared and lacking. So that's spiritual self-care, right?
Yes.
The practice of, and it could be as simple as a piece of music, that you listen to a piece of music and you move yourself from feeling, like wanting to pull the covers over your head, to like, I am going to reach out to that girlfriend, This is spiritual, the intimacy, the connection. Then there's emotional, which we've spoken about, which is the places inside of us that are still hurting and wounded. That's emotional piece. And then the physical, the sheer, like I seek to call my body a body temple.
Yeah.
Because it helps remind me to not be so hard on it.
Yeah.
Every place that jiggles and wiggles and isn't, perfect as
you look amazing. What are you talking
That's
about?
because I'm wearing a really long dress here. But do you know what I mean? We're taught
to be very critical.
We're taught to be very self-critical of our bodies, and insane magazine photos and just insane standards to live up to, So to have a relationship with my body temple that I become grateful that I have a body temple, that it's healthy to the degree that it is, to be thankful and grateful and find the ways that I can eat well, that I can sleep well, that I can move my body well. And for some people, that's going to be simply walking around their block, walking around their neighborhood is good enough. Getting off of your chair and giving yourself that permission. If you're a single mom and you're working and you think you have no time, it's taking the small steps of, I walked around my neighborhood today. I walked my dogs today. I got out of my house. I got into nature, even if it was walking to the end of my driveway, you know, to a full-on yoga practice or a full-on getting a personal trainer or anything in between. It's listening to our bodies, listening to our emotions, and listening to our spirits. Self-care is about listening. And when we begin to listen, we find that there's such wisdom in our spirit, such wisdom in our bodies. It will ask you for exactly what it needs. And it's not usually unreasonable. I find that it's usually pretty reasonable like that. Like, could you just walk the dogs today?
Yes.
You know, or could you just light a candle?
Yeah. And on the spiritual level, it would be maybe meditating or writing in your journal or reflecting. It's like some sort of practice that's really going to connect you to you, to your authentic, to your true inner voice, your higher self.
Exactly correct. Giving yourself even 5 minutes, even 10 minutes. You know, Tony Robbins says if you don't have 10 minutes to yourself in a day, but giving yourself that 10 minutes, even if you have a child, a 3-year-old on your lap, it's okay. It's just, I'm sitting in my chair. This is my meditation chair. So, you know, I'm sitting here for my time today to connect. Maybe it's playing a piece of music while you're quiet and still. Maybe it's writing in your journal.
Speaking of that, you have amazing piano music. I listened to one of the songs. It was on maybe like a heart-opening type of CD on your site, and it brought tears to my eyes. It was so beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you. That's a deep story because what I found, so I was back to my story about piano. I was raised classical pianist, you know, so I played Bach and Chopin and everything. And when I really, I will say, started playing the piano for myself rather than for my mom, I started writing music. And I would never have thought I even wanted to write music or would know how to write music. And music just started coming through me. And it's interesting, back to your question about living out our destiny. What I've found for anyone who is really searching for, like, what is my purpose? What is mine to do? What I have found over and over and over again is that the universe uses every little piece of us. And so how in the world would it all come together for me that I'm a spiritual teacher, I work with individuals, and yet, of course, the kind of music I write is meditative. It would bring tears to your eyes because it is meant to be heart opening. That's my work is all about, right? So it's just interesting that the universe used every little piece of me. And the universe will use every little piece of you for whatever is your destiny and purpose.
I love that. I still feel like I find one of my challenges is that I am such a seeker and I'm always kind of looking and curious. And I think this is a great thing. But then I also find I need to create a balance between kind of this, like, for instance, me figuring out what my purpose is. Like, I know a lot of things I love, and I feel like I'm still trying to figure out the fullest expression of myself. Like, I have a lot of the pieces kind of in a good spot. But how do we balance kind of seeking what the next step is, or, like, for me, figuring out what this next step is and finding my purpose, and also being present in the moment and fully embracing exactly where we are and knowing that exactly where we are is exactly where we should be. So it's like that presence and then that forward momentum of kind of looking out and growing and seeking.
I think this is such an excellent question. It's the paradox of life, right? It's the paradox of life. And at the highest level, recognizing that that there is no difference between those two, but it goes back to the practice of embodying and studying and seeking and simultaneously letting all of that go.
Yeah.
Because I think in our culture, we're so inundated and we're so out of balance with the doing.
Mm-hmm.
So we are over schooled in what to do next, or even seeking can become a doing,
Mm-hmm.
right? It can become your way of being
Yeah.
as you identify yourself in an imbalanced way as a seeker, and that becomes your doing,
Yes.
so to speak,
Yes.
right? And we're very over-taught in the doing, and it's a real, again, I keep using this phrase, it's a real act of courage to sit still.
Yes.
And to not do anything. And I'm certainly not talking about complacency. That's not, I'm assuming we're agreeing. I'm not in the arena of couch potato, like potato
Right.
chips for 10
Right.
years, But I am saying that it's an act of courage to sit still and do nothing until you are truly prompted to take an action. So to the best of my ability, I seek to be still until I'm really prompted to take an action. And the prompting comes from the inside out rather than, and certainly in my quote business, I teach a lot of online courses. So there's, I'm inundated with the marketing of what I should be doing, what I could be doing, how to get the numbers, how to,
Oh, the
it's
shoulds,
all
that's a
the,
big one.
and marketing. Oh my gosh, it's big business, and
Yeah.
spirituality is big business, right? So I could easily be tipped on that scale,
Yeah.
but I'm committed that I want my being to feed my doing. So I must sit still. There's another saying, to he or she who can most perfectly practice inaction, all things are possible. It's a paradox,
Yeah.
right? To he or she who can have the courage to sit still and wait until they're truly prompted, then when they take the action, all things are possible because they've taken right action.
Yeah.
Aligned action, congruent action. So you don't want to get on that treadmill, and it's there. The world is there. The voices are loud, right? So to be in that world, but not to be of it, to say, yes, that treadmill is there. I could easily keep asking, what's my next step? What's my next step? But the answer comes from the inside out. And there's courage involved there. In a world that teaches you should be getting up and being productive today,
Yeah.
it can feel very not productive.
Yes.
To just, what did you do today? Oh, I sat in meditation and am waiting. I'm waiting. I'm waiting for my direction. How long can you say that to someone? But seriously, I have waited and waited and waited and waited.
And what does that look like to you? Your meditation? Are you sitting in your meditation chair silently? Do you have music on? What is the actual practice of waiting?
For me, I really use music a lot in my meditation practice because, again, I think we're overschooled in the mind. So we know so much. We're inundated with information. And I seek to quiet my mind and move into my heart. And I find that the easiest way to move into my heart is through music. So, and even in our Western culture, right, when individuals come to me and they want to learn to meditate, we have this subtle underlying meditate the right way. What is the right way to meditate? How long to meditate? My mind wasn't quiet when I was meditating. My mind was full of chatter. My room wasn't quiet. My 3-year-old came in. We think we're not doing it right. We think there's a right and wrong way. So music for me really allows me to, it's a bridge to move me into my heart. So my meditation practice looks like music. It looks like reading something inspirational, maybe even just a little paragraph of something that uplifts me. It involves, lighting incense or a candle. It's certainly, I'm not saying all this to say it has to look like this. It could be like sitting in my car 5 minutes before I'm picking up my son from school, and that's what I had today. In my car, 5 minutes, quiet. It can look like that. So I'm only offering these sensual additions to help create an atmosphere and an
Yes.
environment, right? Right. So
Sure.
Incense, music, something inspirational, a candle, a quiet room, a comfy chair, all helps just set an environmental tone and an atmospheric tone.
Yes.
But if you don't have that, you just, wherever you end up, you're under a tree, that's where you plop yourself down and are quiet. But yes, that's what mine in particular looks like. And the waiting part is, there's the microcosm and the macrocosm. So the microcosm is that day, I was just quiet. And the macrocosm might be, yes, I'm like for right now, I'm seeking guidance on what my 2019 will look like for online classes or community and so I have some things percolating, but nothing has come yet, right? So I know many other of my colleagues and my friends who are in this same quote business, they're already all about it. They've recorded their stuff, they're marketing, they're, because it starts early and early and earlier this year. So in worldly terms, I could be seen as behind, right? But I don't feel that. I feel that, and there's a million classes I could go teach. There's many, many things I could go do. But I'm committed that for whatever reason, it's percolating right now. It hasn't come, and I'm going to be true to that. And I trust that if and when it comes, I will be able to do 10 times as much in half the amount of time.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
So that's what waiting looks like for me.
Oh, I love that. That's really helpful. That's great. So, in the vein of self-care and finding the time, I mean, we're all so busy. Yes. I imagine once you're a mom, it just makes everything even crazier. So for those who are kind of thinking to themselves, gosh, like I already have a to-do list that's like 10 pages long, and how can we make it a manageable thing? And another thing is the idea of self-care being something you really have to practice regularly in order for it to then become like really like a ritual part of your day that I think people forget, because when they start, they're like, oh, this is too hard, and then people give up on it. So can you speak to that?
Absolutely. Best question. So again, we are inundated that it's the doing part of our life that's more important than the being. So the cards are already stacked against us, right?
Yes.
Our doing is more important than our being. Our sacrificing is more important than our self-care. Our self-abandonment is more important than our self-care. So that's all in the cultural ethers. We've been brought up with that, right? So the first thing, it's mental. It's a mental shift. It's why I call it an act of courage. It's a mental shift to say, I'm going to put this, in the arena of my life. Second, you have to be so gentle with yourself. Exactly what you're saying. You don't need to go out gung-ho, and it isn't something that, it's not all or nothing. Mm-hmm. It's a little breadcrumb, a little breadcrumb, a little breadcrumb. It's cultivating a different way of life. Mm-hmm. And it is the willingness to put yourself on your list. So you want to be very careful that self-care is not put on your to-do list. Definitely, because you'll feel like, oh my God, now there's one more thing I haven't done.
Yeah.
Now I didn't go to yoga, and I told myself I would go to yoga. You don't want self-care on your to-do list. If your self-care feels like it's on your to-do list, it's not self-care.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's big, big, big red flag. If you're feeling like, oh my God, one more thing, that's not self-care. Self-care should be on your to-be list, if you even have one. And it might look like just listening to this podcast today, not just listening to this podcast today.
Yeah.
That if it is anything that has nourished you today, that is self-care.
Okay.
And when you start by acknowledging, oh, that felt good. It feels good when we nourish our spirit. It feels good. When you can connect the dots like that, oh my gosh, taking that 5 minutes to really listen to the end of this felt so good. I gave myself 5 minutes, whereas before I would have cut it off, gone inside, tended to the kids. It's the smallest little things. If you're a mom, it's going to pee by yourself, it's taking a shower by yourself, These tiny permissions, I almost called my book Permission to Thrive. Permission, it's these tiny permissions over and over time. that creates, oh, that felt good. And that really enriched me. And that felt nurturing. It's the smallest choices that all put together in a day make a difference. So if you gave yourself permission to listen all the way to the end here, and then you walked into your house and you walked in and everyone could feel that you feel good.
Mm-hmm.
That translates, that energy translates, rather than you martyred yourself. You really wanted to listen to the end, but it's like, okay, it's 6. I got to go get dinner on the table. And you martyred yourself and you abandoned yourself. And then you walked in the house and you didn't even say a word, but everybody could feel, oh, she's not in good mood. Let's walk on eggshells, right? So that's why I say self-care is so not selfish.
Yes.
It's really more selfish to walk in the house in a terrible mood and have everybody around you walking on eggshells. That's kind of really more selfish when you think about it, right?
Yes.
When you take the extra time and you feel good and you walk in your house and everyone else is at ease when you walk in, that's self-care. And that then translates, then you have more inside of you to give to everyone else around you.
I love it. And you say thriving mothers create thriving children, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. And there's the saying, happy wife, happy life.
Yeah.
So even if you don't have children, right? But I can tell you unequivocally, the relationship that I was having with my son, I can mark it before self-care, after self-care.
Yeah.
And I'm very honest in the book about all of my, weaknesses, shortcomings, things that I had to learn and overcome. But I can mark it before self-care. I was impatient. I was the person walking into the room, and I know my son was learning how to read my energy.
Yeah.
Ooh, mom, I better be good. I better not, I better be quiet. I better not make waves. When I then started walking in the room more relaxed because I had taken care of myself, he could then relax. And back to your point about authenticity, this is crucial because in any relationship, but especially a parent-child relationship, we want our children to get to be their authentic self. So when I was walking in and I was impatient, I was virtually teaching him to create a survival self. I was virtually saying, don't be your authentic self because it might not be okay with me today. I might not have the patience for your authentic self today. So it's really a requirement, a responsibility on my part as a mother to allow my son to be authentic means I have to have the bandwidth. When you think about it in any relationship, if we're girlfriends,
Right.
my responsibility really is to allow yourself to be your most authentic self, which means I might have to be patient. I might have to have that more bandwidth to listen to you, to be more forgiving, to be whatever will be called for from me. So the better I take care of myself, the better partner I'm going to be to you. The better partner I'm going to be to my spouse, my husband, because I've taken care of myself. So I really elevate self-care to a spiritual practice. I have a class called Self-Care as a Spiritual Practice, and I really, utterly elevate it to a spiritual practice. That's how important I want individuals to make it in their life. And it doesn't need to be some, I'm oming for 3 hours a day. It's not that. It's that I elevate it in my mind that this is my spiritual work. There's a saying, a Greek philosopher, Epictetus, said, God has entrusted me with myself.
I love that.
Right? So I've been entrusted with this life. Let me elevate that to a spiritual practice.
Yes. Oh, that's beautiful. All right, I have a couple more kind of like big picture questions, but everyone, we're going to give you Suzi's website and all her info, and we should all be checking out this course. That sounds really,
Yeah,
I think
it's a great course.
Okay, so do you believe that everything happens for a reason?
100%.
Okay. Well,
100%. One of the biggest quotes, I seem to be quoting a lot today, one of the biggest quotes that changed my life, Albert Einstein says, the most important decision an individual can make in their life. Now, right there, the most important decision you can make in your life is whether you believe the universe is friendly. is whether you believe the universe is benevolent. That changed my life because I intellectually agreed with that, but I didn't embody it. So I still felt like a victim in certain ways and areas in my life. And with my relationship with my mom, for a long time, I felt like a victim.
Yep.
So tweaking that paradigm to say, yes, I do believe that everything, even something like cancer, even something like, the atrocities that would be happening, definitely not saying, we have a tendency to say or to think that if I say it's happening for a reason, that I'm actually condoning it.
Right.
So I'm not condoning the atrocities. I'm not condoning that children are being taken from their parents at the border right now. I'm not condoning that by any stretch of the imagination. But I am saying that it's happening to wake us up. So things are happening for a reason. That is not a random act that has happened. It's not a random act. That didn't just pop up from nowhere.
Yeah.
And so if something's individually happening in my life that seems dark, that seems negative, that seems like a dark night of the soul, that seems intense, that seems like it's so hard for me to say, well, why would this be happening? With the undergirding and the foundation of, but it is happening for a reason. What might that reason be? Is the bridge to hope.
Yes.
So if it's happening for a reason and I can discover what that reason is, then I have dominion over shifting things. It literally takes me out of the victim place, which is where I have no dominion. I have no control. I'm an utter victim. To I have dominion and I have the power to take responsibility and shift some things in my life, whether it's eating differently, whether it's relating to individuals in my life differently. Maybe I'm here to learn humility. Maybe I'm here to learn to step out more. You learn by asking, what might this reason be?
Yes, I completely agree with that. What do you think is the number one thing holding us back from being happy and fulfilled in life, just in general?
That we have the wrong definition of what happiness and fulfillment is in the first place. We're running towards the wrong definition.
Yeah.
So the definition that we've been taught is definitely, especially I speak as a woman, so the definition of happiness as a young girl is get married, have kids, white picket fence, right car, marry the guy with the right job, have money, right neighborhood, right zip code, go to the right school. It's all external. Every single one of those things is external. So we've been taught that happiness is an external set of circumstances.
Yes.
Wrong definition. So I feel like why 99.9% of us, to quote Thoreau, leading lives of quiet desperation, is because we've been chasing the wrong definition of happiness. So happiness, that's why I'm so dedicated to self-care and spreading this message of what self-care is, because happiness is internal.
Yes.
Happiness is being able to sit in I live in a modest little room in a modest little neighborhood, and I can tell you I'm thriving.
Yeah.
Right? Because thriving is feeling abundant, feeling prosperous, feeling creative, feeling connected, feeling inspired, feeling intimate, feeling joyful from the inside out, no matter whether I'm in a prison cell. That's why Nelson Mandela could be free in a prison cell for 27 years. Or if I'm in someone's mansion in Malibu.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter the external. And that's what so many people find. They check off all the boxes. Well, I'm married. I have the 2.5 kids. I have the right car. I'm in the right neighborhood, and I'm freaking miserable.
Yeah, oftentimes you hear that of people who they're climbing the ladder, trying to get to this place, and then they get there and they realize there's nothing there that they thought they would get when they
Wrong
got there.
definition of happiness from the first place, and it's well intended. I have a 16-year-old son. I'm inundated in the world of like, what college is he going to go to? Have you checked out colleges yet? What's his grade point average? How does he take the SATs? What did he get on the SATs? I mean, the list is endless, right? We're inundated. And to have the courage to not buy into that definition, but to say happiness is possible.
Yeah.
Having it all is possible. Thriving is possible. Having my all is possible. When I take the time to really go within and ask, well, what is my all? What is my what will fulfill me?
Yeah.
And being true to that, even if it looks different. And maybe a lot of it looks the same. Maybe you do want to go to an Ivy League school. Maybe you do want to, it's not to put a value judgment on one or the other, but we blindly often follow it thinking it's going to give us something.
Yes.
And Michael Beckwith talks over and over and over about we are not here to get something from the world. We are here to bring something to the world.
Yes.
That is what will bring you true happiness, is recognizing that taking care of yourself is not only so not selfish, but it will fill you, and then you will have something to bring and to give and to be of service.
Yes. I find that I love thinking about it like the process of getting to know myself again, like when I'm journaling and I'm just trying to figure out like how I really feel about something, or really like we've talked about getting in touch with that inner voice, because it's something that is not taught in our culture at all.
Right.
And there's all these prescriptions of how we're supposed to act and what we're supposed to do. And it really does take practice to figure out, you know, which part of me is doing this because I think I'm supposed to do it, and then which part, what do I really want to do? You know, what is really calling to me? And then asking myself if I do want to do something, just double checking, like, well, why? Like, what is my intention behind that? Is it ego driven, or is it really truly my heart's calling? I just feel like that is everything you said. I just couldn't agree with more. So
yes, and huge. That, again, that's a courageous act, to take all of that time that you're giving yourself and really, that's so self-honoring and it's so self-dignifying because we are taught to quiet that voice. And not intentionally. Our parents did not try to quiet it intentionally. It's just they too bought into, they just want the best for us.
They didn't know any better.
They honestly thought the best was get a Harvard degree, become, successful, have money, have kids. So it was an unintentional leading us down this path. So how self-dignifying that you give yourself the space to ask yourself, what is really my heart's desire? Because perhaps my heart's desire had gotten quieted along the way.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay, we're getting towards the end. How do you know when you're connected to something greater than yourself?
I think it goes back to the young children and awe. When there's something where you just feel uncontained. It could be like this conversation with you and meeting you today. I feel it took me out of the mundane of my day-to-day life, and it transcended me. I feel like I've met a girlfriend. I have now this community of people that you've introduced me to. I hope to keep in touch with everyone. It's taken me out of my mundane world and connected me with something. And it's the same feeling I could have when I'm at the ocean or in the forest or out in nature or making love or, anything, reading poetry, anything that takes you out of your limited life. And or like I happen to have orchids, like just looking at those, they make me happy. Right? So when I know I'm connected is when I feel, I want to say congruent, in a flow. There's a flow. There's a flow. There's a flow.
Like
there's a synergy. There's a synergy. There's a timelessness. And that's the other thing, not to hark on self-care, but we were speaking about how we're all so busy, which we are. The cool thing about self-care is, if you give yourself even 20 minutes to call a girlfriend and have a good, or 20 minutes and journal, 20 minutes, read something delicious or eat something delicious, that 20 minutes is going to have your whole afternoon different. You're going to get 10 times as much stuff done in half the amount of time. You're going to be more fun to be around. My family can tell if I'm on a self-care path or not, right? I'm more pleasant to be around. So that's how do you know when you're connected to your highest self? The flow is there. The joy is there.
Yeah.
And even if you're going through a hard time, even if you're feeling depressed, even if you're going through a challenging time, but you feel connected to yourself or connected to another person, that's a flow.
Absolutely. I love it. Okay, we're going to end on my favorite question. What do you think is the purpose of life? You talked about it earlier, like why we're here, like what to you? How would you answer that?
I would say that the purpose of life is to bring these invisible spiritual qualities to life. So these invisible qualities of joy and creativity and prosperity and intimacy and love, to bring it, to manifest it, to bring it, quote, bring it to life.
Yeah, animate it.
Animate it,
Yeah.
right? Because if not, they're just qualities in my mind, qualities that are unmanifested. And it's like an artist who doesn't let themselves create. They're kind of constipated, right? So the purpose of life is to allow yourself to be in the flow and to bring whatever is yours to bring into fruition. And maybe you're a good listener, and when your girlfriend calls, you have the ability to listen. Maybe you're an artist and you're meant to paint. Maybe you're here, you're the best nurturer, whatever it is that is yours to manifest, to bring it to life. That's what I think the purpose of life is, to find what our gifts are and to offer our gifts to each other in the world.
Oh, that's beautiful. Thank you so much for taking the time to share this amazing conversation with me. I've loved it.
My pleasure. The other thing that I will say is I'm so glad I followed my intuition. That's another purpose of life, is to follow intuition. So glad we didn't do this on Skype.
Yes, me too.
My intuition was, I didn't want you to go out of your way to have to come here, but I'm so glad we didn't do this on Skype, and I followed that. It's okay, and this has been fabulous.
Likewise. Okay, so where can people find you? What requests do you have the audience? What
all you have to do is know how to spell my name.
Okay.
Suzi Lula, Suzi, because there's many ways to spell Suzi, SUZILULA.com. You'll see all of my online courses. They're self-study courses. If anything that we've shared speaks to you, I delve deeper into the self-study courses. I'm getting ready to teach a class right now on forgiveness. If that's something you're interested in, it's an online community. I have so many classes. That's the easiest way to find me. Send me an email, get on my mailing list. I'm always sending out resources and stuff.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Suzi.
My utter pleasure.
Thank you guys so much for joining us today. For more information on School Your Soul, visit us at schoolyoursoulpodcast.com and connect with us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at School Your Soul. Also, I love to hear from you guys, so send me an email and say hi. Let me know what you're struggling with or what you'd like to learn more about, or even who you'd like me to interview next. My email is schoolyoursoul@gmail.com. And thank you so much for those of you who have reached out and shared your appreciation for the show. It really means a lot. I'm so grateful to every single listener out there. That's all for today. Namaste.